All right, this is for Kris Jay Robinson. And his goal is basically to do a Legend Encrypted style stuff here, and all I've done so far is just break this into different layers. Um, so there's a lot of different things that you're not understanding properly. Now you've got two drawings here, and they're both kind of that in the same realm of issues of things going wrong. Um, So the first thing about legends of cryptids is they really look for a dramatic lighting effect. And so the problem you've got going on is you've got a bright light source here, you've got bright light source from behind, and so you really haven't matched your lighting at all. And you need to kind of pay attention to that aspect. Another thing is composition. You've got kind of a bland. I don't want to say bland, but it's very split down the middle. If you look at this from this point of view, you've pretty much got two on each side, and she's split down the middle. So that's something that you want to kind of work with as well. Um, and so on top of that, you have textures and anatomy and a lot of different parts that you're not understanding to its full potential. So there's a couple things. First, let's look at anatomy. Now, with this, the pose that you've got a base pose, um, but the problem is you don't have any real contrapposto. Uh, it's very slim, and what you want to do is you want to develop a better concept. So it would be much more like this. You want to angle the hips a little bit more, and bring down that that aspect of kind of that presence. And then on top of that, you've got the drapery going on, but you've just kind of done this even everyday stroke, and it turns into a very repetitious style. You want to look at drapery as a whole, and on top of that, you're really flat on the forms. So even though her legs popping out, the fabric is still coming straight down. It needs to come over and down. Okay, so you need to work with your foreshortening as well. Um, and so to kind of fix this, I'm just gonna start off with some of the anatomy issues and things like that. So you've got this deer here, and the first thing that I would say right off the bat is I would get rid of this middle deer because of the simple fact, and I'm not going to even worry about the features here, but you're using your lighting in the background here to kind of sell off this idea. But the problem you have is, and I'm gonna get rid of this deer too. The problem you have is that the deer are um, not really kind of your main focus. You've got too much stuff going on, and so by just simply getting rid of the trees in the background here and um, letting her stand on its own is a much more interesting concept. And I'm even going to kind of start kind of dulling out some of this light in the background so that it sells more of this concept. Now I'm going to go and grab some of these deers from the original here. I'm just going to take these out too, and we're going to kind of get rid of the deer. And so do you see how by just getting rid of those deers, um, it kind of pushes her to the foreground, and you can still have the deer in there. You just want to be aware of what's going on with it. And if you've got her in the trees, and I'm just going to erase this real quick here. And if you've got her in the trees, The problem is with this is you've got kind of this sense of there's no real sense of like foreground, background elements and things like that. So by getting rid of the deers from the initial foreground elements, I'm creating a much more interesting concept. She stands by herself on this. Now, then we're going to fix the background by just adding in some more trees, more tree concepts, and it can be very simple, very easy. Just kind of roughing this out like so. And you see how the focal area, let's do this one here. So here's a tree. And then let's do this kind of tree here. And let's kind of cover that up. And so you see by putting those trees in the background here, you can actually emphasize and tell it to point towards with the branches. So that's something that you want to do. The other thing is, let's move something like this here, kind of. Okay, so now I've broken down the background, so it's a lot simpler. And then from there, I'm just going to go back and grab some of these deers. Just copy and oops. All right, here, copy. Let's bring this up. So now we've got the deer back in there, and what we can do is transform the deer so that it's more in the background. Something like this. And let's erase. And I'll just kind of redraw real quick here. So we've got deer, we've got the antlers. And then let's go to adjustments, and we're going to darken it a little bit and desaturate it a little bit. But with this in here now, I can start seeing how those deer, let's add some tree, grass, let's get a little bit darker. Okay, and so you can start seeing how those deer are now secondary, not a primary focus. And I understand what you're trying to do with it, but the problem is you've got way too much going on with it. And let's grab this deer here. Copy this one, put it back here. Okay, and even with this, let's mute the colors here, desaturate, actually. Okay, so we can even add in, kind of paint some of this out here, and kind of put in the rough idea that it's looking from behind the tree. Now, so do you see now she becomes the entire focus. She has a lot more, it's a lot more interesting, and it's a lot more kind of this more creative process going on. You're focusing on what you're looking at. And then on top of that, we're jumping up to the foreground elements here. And you've got this piece here, and we're just going to transform it to be significantly bigger, like so. And I'm going to move it up over here like this. And then I'm going to just kind of work on getting some of the darks, because anything in the foreground should be super dark compared to the rest of the composition. So we're just getting some of this down, like so, and then let's grab this one here, and free transform this one here, something like this. Okay, so now with that in the dark, I'm just going to clean up some of this here. We're just going to use some of these darks here to just kind of sell your concept a little bit more, like so. And this is going to add to the branches. Something like this. All right. And if things are growing on there, I'm just going to really quickly kind of paint other things in there. Just grab and add some shadow in there to kind of mute those tones. Okay, so by separating that, by putting that foreground element in there, I'm getting a little bit more sense of what's going on with foreground, middle ground, background. And let's see if we can just kind of erase some of this and make it look a little bit more rough. And so, oops. Okay. All right. So now she's standing on by herself, and now you need to fix some of the anatomy issues and things like that. You've got lighting issues go as well. You've got anatomy. You've got a number of different things going on. So with these big horns, everything kind of feels like it's kind of pushing up towards this. And so what I'm going to do is really quickly just kind of grab this and let's escape out of this one here. Okay. Let's grab this and kind of put this over here. Something along the lines of like this. Let's cover this up. Oops. There we go. So that's kind of the start of that. And let's grab here and erase this down. Now, do you see how by putting her arm down, I'm giving more focus to this up here? Instead of like having the arm raised like this, it's kind of fighting each other. Whereas if the arm is down, now what's happening is I'm getting a better sense of what's going on as far as the entire concept. And then you want to look at the anatomy, because things like this right here, you've got the right idea, but the pectoral muscle would come up like this and it would meet into the breast. So the breast would round out like this. So there would be a lot more shadow underneath there. The elbow, the forearm, all of those have little issues that you want to kind of adjust and tweak and play with. Knees, you want to look at the landmarks on the body and kind of develop those ideas to kind of sell your idea. And look at silhouette too, because we can easily do that. And then the anatomy here, you have to look at the deer anatomy to kind of join this up, because you would have a little bit less, you wouldn't have that kind of concept. It would be a little bit more. Now, the other thing is look at drapery too, because you're putting this leg out here like so, and it's actually probably going to come up something like this. All right, and then this is actually coming over and down, if that makes sense. So you're getting a much greater sense of how things are flowing, and then from there you need to have some semblance of how this is connected. So you're probably going to add in kind of this here, like so, and then we'll add in kind of the drapery, and then let's go a little bit saturated and bright to kind of give you that drapery flowing look. Now this isn't perfect, but it's giving me a better idea than the kind of repetitious stuff I mentioned before. So with this all said, then you need to get the lighting source in there. Once you fix the anatomy and get that pose down, you need to get the lighting information in there. And so with this lighting information, you will no longer have these highlights over here. You won't have these highlights over here. Under here, in here, is all going to be casting shadows. So it really depends on the positioning of the light. Most likely this is coming from the foreground. So elements like that need to kind of really sell. And the closer you are to light, the higher contrast you'll have. So you want to have this semblance of how things are really being pushed dramatically with the light and dark. And then as the light fades off, there'd be light on her face, light on the cowl here, the hood. You'd have rim light coming in from the horns. All of this would have, especially horns, they have some sheen on it as well. So you want to catch that light and make it pop. Probably have light on her breasts, light on the upper arm, and then as you go down, especially near here, you're going to get some of the shadows popping out like so, probably like this. You're going to get a lot more shadow on the sides of the breasts because of the way the fabric falls and things like that. So you want to, really push that light source. You'd also get shadows on the side here and probably some of the shadow falling here, depending on how far the arm sticks out. So, really pushing that anatomy, really pushing that concept is gonna push your idea a little bit more and get it closer to the point that you're doing. Same thing over here. You wouldn't have a lot of shine over here, but if this is reflective, you're gonna have that real bright shine going on all your gold pieces, where it's kind of selling that idea. You think about the reflection, think about where things are kind of working. So getting a good light source going on in there is going to help you out quite a bit. And it's something that you want to really kind of push and work with, because simply, as you can see, just by simply doing this, and then let's add in shadow here underneath, kind of to push her on the ground instead of just that one shadow. And that's the things that you want to do. And when it comes to your magic and stuff like that, don't be so muddy on it. Give it the props that it deserves. So if it's this spotted magic, and I'm probably using the wrong brush here. Let's see if we can use, oops, you want to use harsh, smaller here, by putting a little bit of pointillism around it, by adding in, some interesting designs. Oops. That's going to really sell the idea that you've got movement going on and things like that. So think about your overall general, where things are moving to, and your theme on that. And to just define the light as more of an object instead of, kind of this mist. So those are things that you want to really work on and kind of portray in your initial designs. All right.